Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Today, sadly, we're reacting to another shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota, home of where the shooting or the death of George Floyd happened. And I'm thinking back on this. This just happened on the 2nd of February. And here's what happened. There's a guy by the name of Amir Locke. Amir Locke was living right off of Marquette Avenue in downtown Minneapolis, or staying there. And the Minneapolis get a request by St. Paul police to execute a search warrant, basically an arrest warrant, on a homicide case. Now, there's two types of warrants, basically. There's just your regular warrant, and then there's a no-knock warrant, in other words, by surprise. And in order to get a no-knock warrant, you have to demonstrate that the warrant can be more effectively and safely executed by doing a no-knock warrant. So in other words, you have to get permission. So the original warrant that was obtained by St. Paul Police Department did not contain a no-knock permission. Minneapolis police went and got a no-knock permission, but they had both. And they went up into the... And so it's kind of important because... if you knock on the, and really the issue with the no knock is that you're afraid that they're going to destroy evidence. So you show up to a drug house and you knock, and you announce your presence, and they flush all the dope down the toilet. That's kind of what it's for. But it can also be used for high risk situations too. But at the end of the day, the police are supposed to reassess, and decide in the moment. Even though they have their permission, doesn't mean you necessarily have to use that permission, right? So in this particular case, they went to this apartment building, and it's unclear as to how many searches they did that day. But what they did is they got a key for this particular door for a particular individual. They open the door. They see somebody laying underneath the covers, and as the person's getting up, and you'll see this on a video here I'm going to show you in a second, person gets up, and they don't announce their presence until after they open the door. So it really was a no-knock situation to start with. The person is basically sleeping under a blanket, it looks like, and they had a gun in their hand and didn't point it anywhere, but pop, 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 and they kill Amir Locke. Now, a couple things, if you remember the George Floyd case, when George Floyd first died, there was a press release by the cops, and the cops said that he had a medical incident, whatever, which turned out not to be true. And that kind of is happening here a little bit too. And now Chief Arredondo, who was the chief of Minneapolis police, is no longer the chief. They have an assistant, an acting chief, and she's head of training. So we got a high risk situation on a homicide. The cops come, and so let's play this video, and we're gonna play it slow, and then go from there. So take a look. So they're saying search warrant. They get in with a key, and they don't say anything until after the door is open, so it's a no-knock. And they fan out. Now you can see he's under the covers completely. So he probably had no idea that they were coming. Unless he heard him search one of the other apartments, but there's no evidence to suggest that he did. And here's the thing. Amir Locke was not the subject of the warrant. Not the subject of the warrant. That's a key factor. 22-year-old individual with a concealed carry permit with no criminal record that we know of. Okay, you hear the first shot. What do you see? You just see a guy under a blanket. He's not, certainly isn't pointing a gun at anybody. I'm just going to break this down. You can see that he's got a gun. Now, the gun that he has is a FN 5.7. Now, that is a firearm that's pretty unique, and it shoots 5.7 rounds. 5.7 rounds, as you can see in this picture here, they're like a mini rifle round, and they can go through body armor, but they're not illegal. Now we're going to do it at regular speed. See? They've opened the door, or just about to open the door, and they don't say a word. No knock.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
Get on the ground. And he's under the covers. Or under a blanket. Now, you can't see what he's really doing. That's the first shot. Second shot. So, he's shot multiple times. And he's killed. They take him over, the police bring him down to the medics downstairs, and they take him over to the hospital, and he's killed. He dies at the hospital. Now, what do the cops say? So let's read their press release shortly after this happened. On February 2nd, at approximately 6:48, the Minneapolis police SWAT team was executing a search warrant for the St. Paul Police Department Homicide Unit on the 1100 block of Marquette Avenue South. Officers gained entry to the apartment on the 7th floor, loudly and repeatedly announcing their presence, crossed the threshold of the apartment, and advanced with continued loud announcements of their presence. Well, they breached the door without saying a word. Approximately 9 seconds into the entry, officers encountered a male who was armed with a handgun pointed in the direction of the officers. At one point, shots were fired and the adult male suspect was struck, giving you kind of the impression that the other guy shot first. Officers immediately provided emergency aid and carried the suspect down to the lobby to meet paramedics. The suspect was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center, where he died. The suspect's gun was recovered and is depicted in the included photographs. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension responded and is conducting an independent investigation. Officers were wearing body-worn cameras which were recording on the video. Interim Chief Amelia Huffman has reviewed the body-worn camera's footage. The Minneapolis Police Department is fully cooperating with the BCA's investigation. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office will release the identity of the deceased along with the nature of the cause of death, blah, blah, blah. So, in the last 3-4 years, this is just happening over and over again. I hesitate to wonder why they couldn't have done a stakeout. Why they couldn't have done a stakeout and a takedown. Is there a reason we can't try to get more intel? Is there a reason why we can't do this more peacefully than this guns draw? And granted, it is a homicide, so it is a high-risk, felony warrant situation. I don't know what the answer is, quite honestly. I just don't. Better training. Our whole approach to this kind of stuff is very militaristic. I just don't know why this guy couldn't have been surveilled. Why couldn't they park somebody down the hall? And it would take some manpower to, just park somebody down the hall and wait till somebody comes out. Somebody's eventually going to come out. They're going to go wherever and get some intel on this person. This wasn't even the subject of the fucking warrant. This wasn't his apartment. This wasn't where he lived. And he had no record. And he had no connection to this homicide that we know of. It just strikes me that we have too many police-involved shootings. And there's got to be an easier way. The police are on edge. No question about it. it's a shitty time to be a cop right now. No question about it, especially in Minneapolis. Let's just take a look for a second at the police response right afterwards.
Why was Amir Locke referred to as a suspect?
And so I'm going to ask.
Why was Amir Locke referred to as a suspect in the MPD's press release?
I don't know. So can you speak to that?
Why was his junk pictures released?
So, but we could do one question at a time. We do want to answer the questions, but I would also prefer just to one question at a time. To your question, I do not know.
Does the chief know? Can the chief answer that question?
Go ahead.
So yesterday, at the time that we were putting out the press release, we didn't have as much information as we have now, of course. And so it's unclear, it was certainly unclear yesterday, but it remains unclear if or how Mr. Locke is connected to St. Paul's investigation. And more information will be coming as St. Paul digs further into the case.
Why did you refer to him as a suspect in a press release if you
That's
didn't
all the
know?
time we have, everyone. Let's call it.
No.
Was anyone apprehended as part of this?
Also,
When will you release your search warrant?
how is walking out of a press conference transparency? You are a murderer!
See, that's the tension that we're dealing with. You know, I mean, just the Minneapolis Police Department is not catching any breaks here, and they're not doing themselves any fucking favors either. You've got a situation where they put out, you know, that he was a suspect. They had no information to suggest that he was a suspect. You know, he did have a firearm on him, and when you're entering a situation like that, you gotta, you know, it's a felony warrant situation, felony homicide situation. You have to believe that the person's going to be armed, and this person was, but so far there's no information to suggest that he had any connection to the warrant whatsoever. So there's got to be, I think, a safer way to do this, because people are getting killed. I think this is about the 5th or 6th homicide in the last 2 years in Minneapolis by Minneapolis Police Department. And we saw what happened with Kimberly Potter. She was convicted pretty quickly. Well, actually not quickly. It was a couple days. But she still was convicted of manslaughter in the first degree, and she's looking at 150 months. You saw that Derek Chauvin, he got convicted of choking the shit out of George Floyd by putting his knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 46 seconds. And you had Mr. Castillo, you've got Dante Wright, and you've got a couple other ones. You know, there's just too many of these. There's just too many of these homicides. There's too many guns out there. There's too many people fucking shooting. You know, here's the thing. You know, we talk a lot about these, you know, the drill and our society and this and that. Guys, I had a guy call me today about what can I do to get my concealed carry. Don't get your concealed carry. Leave your fucking gun at home. Be super careful about the situations that you put yourself in. You know what? If I'm a black man in New York City right now, I would be scared fucking shitless, because those cops are going to exact revenge. They just are. And they're going to exact revenge on the wrong people, on the innocents. You know, they're going to go overboard. Cops are on edge. On edge. It's a very, very, very difficult time to be a police officer. It's also a very difficult time to be a black man in this country. You know, Breonna Taylor, a black woman, you know, getting shot for no fucking reason at all. None. You know, I just don't know, you know, where we go with this. You know, when looking at the issue here, it's the militarization of our police force. Why not just park yourself outside that fucking door until somebody comes out, and then nab them? And if you look at this situation with Mr. Locke, let's say it's 7 in the morning, and that's why they do these early morning ones for a surprise. And which is fine. I mean, the idea is you surprise them, you overwhelm them, and nobody gets hurt. But I mean, imagine, it's everybody's right to sleep with the gun right next to them, unless you're a felon, obviously. But imagine just all of a sudden somebody busting down your door and waking you up out of a dead sleep, and you have your gun right next to you. What are you going to do? This is a situation that didn't have to be like this. It didn't have to happen like this. I want to see some comments from you guys as to what you think, a reasonable solution to these killings are. And these are killings. There's really no reason that this guy had to die. And this is part of our channel, preaching peace and preaching being careful, preserve your life, build your life, do everything you can to stay out of situations like this. Be careful who you associate with. And I'm not saying this guy did anything wrong, because he didn't. And I'm not blaming the victim. I'm not saying it's his fault. He did have a firearm on him. And that was probably known going into it, that the person might have a firearm on him. But he wasn't the subject of the warrant. And we don't know yet if he has anything to do with this. What kills me about the press releases and the cover-up, the immediate need to get some information out there. Positive information, a positive spin by the cops. They didn't need to do that. All they needed to do was say, we're investigating a shooting. This is what we did. Boom. And then they called this guy a suspect. He wasn't a suspect at all. Less information is better than more. So this has just been, an interesting time in our nation's history where we have all these cop shootings, cop-involved shootings. And it just is happening too much, too fast, too many times. And it's like we have a couple a year, at least, in Minneapolis. So, want you guys to be safe. So, build your life and keep yourself safe. Do what you have to do to have something to protect. Stay out of situations where somebody's going to hurt you. And do what you got to do to have a good life. So I just wanted to bring this message to you in light of the most recent killing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers.